Hi, I'm Ann DeLisi.
And I'm Chef James Regato.
And in this episode of Essential Cooking, we sit down with Fred Sareini, a food influencer in Dearborn, Michigan, whose day job as a clay sculptor for Ford Motor Company plays very nicely into his reverse engineering mindset for food. We only scratched the surface when we talked with him about Dearborn, Michigan, which is home to the largest Arab American population in the country.
So today's guest, we have Fred Sareini, who is, I don't want to say an accidental food influencer. Not that anything you do is not purposeful, but you have a day job. You're not necessarily the typical food influencer, but because you focus on halal cuisine and specifically Dearborn cuisine. But yeah, and your day job?
I am a clay sculptor at Ford Design.
Which is awesome. That's a very interesting job. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a daytime mudslinger.
How long have you been doing that?
I just entered my 22nd year, so yeah, it's been a minute.
How has that work? How has that work changed over those 22 years?
Well, not a whole lot. A lot of it used to be done mechanically by hand. Now we have milling to do most of that, and of course the introduction of AutoCAD too. But I actually got to see a little bit of the old school and now the new stuff. So I've watched it progress, which is pretty cool to see.
Do you like what you see in the progression? Sometimes change is not great, and sometimes it really does make a difference in a positive way.
Yes, yes and no. I mean, a lot of things have made, a lot of the technology have made things easier for us, but overall, you still need a three-dimensional model that you can actually walk around and look at. You know, it's just seeing it on the screen is never going to suffice, ever. So you're always going to need clay modelers. You're always going to need them.
Isn't that something, no matter how far ahead we've gotten with technology, they still need for you to make it with your hands? Yeah,
because the design will literally sometimes start on a bar napkin. I'm sure you've heard the cliche.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it really does happen that way. It's a sketch that a designer will do on a piece of paper or sometimes a napkin. and we breathe it into life, into a three-dimensional life.
And so while you're sculpting, are you thinking about food?
I am always thinking about food.
And so this is your day job for years.
Yes.
For you said 21 years.
Well, at Ford. So I've been at it since out of high school.
Okay.
I've been in the industry.
Okay.
So yeah. But at Ford, I've been 22 years.
And so how long then have you kind of, because I feel like you're like, with your Instagram page and kind of your guiding of the halal cuisine, how did this kind of like start? Like when did you start getting a little more serious about being a kind of a mouthpiece of like food?
So honestly, I think I've been a foodie ever since I can remember, really. And I know some people like they shy away from that label foodie. I don't mind it because to me it means you love food. You love sharing it. You love eating it. You love making it, So, and that's where I'm at.
Right.
But the way it started out for me as far as like Instagram, before Instagram, believe it or not, I actually have old 35 millimeter, what do you call them? Negatives?
Yeah. Negatives. Yeah.
Yep.
Where I've taken pictures of food.
Yeah. Right.
Just for me, I never shared them. They're in an album somewhere at home, But the old 35 millimeter cameras.
So you've been documenting what you've been eating for as long as you can remember.
And it started out, like I still do it to this day. As a matter of fact, I was at dinner yesterday in Birmingham, and I was with Lindsay Green. She just
food writer.
She just got nominated for a Pulitzer.
Yeah, I saw that. It's incredible.
So I was sitting next to her, and she asked me something similar, and I said, when you eat food, like the food that's in front of you right now, what's going through your mind? Mm-hmm. And she looked puzzled for a minute. I go, well, let me tell you what goes through my mind. What goes through my mind is I'm trying to reverse engineer what I'm tasting. Mm-hmm. How do I make this? How do I make this at home? Because I love it. You know what I mean? And the things that I don't love, I'll be like, how do I improve it? Mm-hmm. What does this need to be better? That's what goes through my mind. And it's always been that way. And that's why I started taking those photos, in the beginning. I wanted to remember what it looked like so that I could recreate it at home. And it's always been a thing for me where when I really, really enjoy something, or if I see or hear something that isn't halal, Cuban sandwiches, right? You know, it's pork on pork on pork, right? It's like, man, everyone talks about Cuban. I want a Cuban sandwich so bad.
Yeah.
So I finally made one from veal and used turkey ham. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it turned out great, you know, where I'm sure people that eat pork will be like, no, not the same, dude.
Right.
Not the same. But all I know is what I had was freaking delicious. That's all I care, you know?
So so I guess like when did you notice that people wanted to kind of, because everything you're saying is very, very much about you, kind of like your perspective.
Yeah.
When did you realize that people wanted to actually hear your perspective? When like you need to start sharing tips and you know, be more of a guide?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things. One of them is like on a slow day, I'll get maybe 30, DMs asking me where I should go to eat for my anniversary or what should, or for a recipe or something, so I feel like I have almost like a duty,
right?
To these people that I feel bad for them, because I remember what it was like for me starting out. Like my wife and I, we didn't have many places to go eat because we were halal eaters, but we still enjoyed dining. So we'd always end up in either Birmingham or Royal Oak or Ferndale or, wherever, somewhere other than Dearborn Heights to eat. And I was like, man, I want my city to be the destination city. How do I do that? So I started focusing on, highlighting what's really good around me, and they were kind of like sleeper things, things, and some things that people never heard of, like I put fette up. I don't know if you know what fette is. It's like, it's a yogurt dish where it's either beef or lamb. Sometimes it's stewed with onions and chickpeas. And then there's a garlic yogurt poured all over it. And then ghee butter, is poured on top with some pine nuts, some roasted pine nuts.
Yeah.
It's a delicious dish with, I forgot the main part, which is fried pita or baked or toasted pita or Arabic bread. But it's a very simple thing, but it's very common amongst, Arab people, especially Lebanese people. It's very, very common. And
you
people,
don't see it. You don't see it. If you don't
for
know.
a while, you never would see it on a menu anywhere,
Why
any
though?
restaurant.
It sounds so delicious.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like, it's weird because these are things that you make at home and you think, who the hell is going to come to a restaurant to eat this? You know what I mean? Because for you, it's not new. It's old. And it's like done over and over and over again. You know what I mean?
Right.
So for you, it's old. But to somebody who's never heard of it or even seen it, it's very new and it's very good. So it's kind of like how my work is. I get to see like the Ford GT, beautiful supercar, right? I was looking at it for quite some time before it ever was released and put on the road. So by the time it was put on the road, to me, it was old news,
Right. Yeah.
But to everybody else, they were all excited. They're like, oh my God, look what Ford did. This thing is amazing, and I was like, yeah, I was like that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When I saw the first sketch,
Right.
that's where I was.
I think for Southeast Michiganders, Dearborn is one of those. I mean, Dearborn has so much delicious food. I'm a chef. I've spent my whole life cooking, and like I get overwhelmed with like trying to dissect what's going on in Dearborn. My business partner is Chaldean, so I have a little bit of a circle that has some Arabic cuisine. So I've been exposed to some, but I mean, there's so many different cultures and styles, and then I think religion is interesting too, because like with Ramadan, obviously Chaldeans are Catholic, and then Ramadan is obviously diets change and restaurant business hours change.
Yep.
Like there's so much to learn and unpack in Dearborn. I find it to be honestly thrilling. And I mean, I'm completely going to call you and we're going to do a food tour. But I mean, I would honestly, I think you need to do food tours weekly almost. You probably could quit your day job and just do food tours of Dearborn, because really,
I've thought about it.
I mean,
I really have.
I swear I would
You
pay,
could do
pay
it.
good money for it, because like, I want to know so much more. And I think, the the average person in Michigan, like, the average like non-Arabic person doesn't know a ton of like, Arabic words or, it's not like, it's like you can read a menu in French and you can probably pick up most of what's going on there. For me, when I see Arabic writing or if I even hear Arabic words, I'm like, it's a blind spot.
Chicken scratches.
Right. So to me, I'm like, I would love to know more and then have the confidence to like order, go in, try new things. And I mean, then you have like, how many different countries can you off the top of your head name that cuisine is represented in Dearborn?
Oh my God. It's quite a few. I mean, obviously Lebanon, Iraq, pretty much every Middle Eastern country is represented in Dearborn. And that's a lot of them, anywhere from Jordan to Palestine to
Yemen.
Yemen. I mean, Saudi Arabian, there's Egyptian, so many.
And those,
and they're different. They're very different.
The cities inside these countries vary.
Very.
Let alone, like this, I'm sure the neighborhoods of the cities vary.
Very much.
Let alone the countries.
Yes.
Let alone the cuisines, the people, etc. So, like I said, I find it to be thrilling. I wish I had more access to Dearborn. And that's kind of why I wanted to have you on the show today is because like, what do you think, like what makes Dearborn special? What are some of your favorite just things to do and eat in Dearborn?
My one of my favorite places to eat is Dearborn Meat Market.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I love that place. So
because
cool.
it's so simple.
Well, describe it.
Well, it's basically a butcher shop. It really is. It's what it is. You walk in the front, it's a butcher shop. In the back, there's a grill that was built in like almost like a sunroom, and there's a grill that's built into the wall, and that grill has a hardwood charcoal that they use with oak, real hardwood oak underneath, and they're cooking that meat. The meat's never frozen. Mm-hmm. It comes in fresh, right off like a side of a cow. You'll see. I've been there when they bring in this whole side of beef, and they butcher it up, and they'll make kofta. They do chicken too.
Right.
No lamb because the owner, Abu Ali, he's like, no, that stinks. To get that out of
He doesn't like lamb?
He's like, no, that stinks. Get it out of here. I won't have lamb because it stinks.
I love lamb.
But yeah, I do too. He is right though. When it's raw and it's in your place, it does have a smell. It's kind of like walking into a poultry place that, slaughters their own poultry. Mm-hmm. It's really stinky.
Smell it,
yeah. It's pretty much right around the same, situation. So that's why he's like, no, none of it. But yeah, they keep everything very, very simple. And the way it was designed is the way I ate growing up. Like when I went to my uncle's house or my dad or my mom, the way they would cook is like, they'd go to the butcher. We never bought meat at Kroger. Mm-hmm. We never bought meat, at a grocery store. We always went to a butcher. That's the way it's done in the old country, and that's the way it's done here, mm-hmm. Especially with the whole halal scene. So we don't know what frozen meat is. You kind of don't know it. And when you have it, you know it.
Yeah.
Because you grow up not eating it. When you have it, you know it. You know what I mean? So you could tell when it's frozen. But anyway, it's all about fresh and then right to the fire and into your mouth.
And they do things like, hearts. There's like, they do different,
he has
different
sweet
cuts.
breads.
Yeah.
He has hearts and kidneys too, beef heart and beef kidney, and liver, which you could order raw too. So, and every day the side of beef is fresh. I'm not sure how long it's aged. I've heard that it's maybe a day or two, which some people say, oh no, we want it aged longer or whatever. Honestly, it's just as good.
Go taste for yourself.
Yeah, go taste for yourself. I think it's great. Yeah.
Where else?
Where else? Another place that I love to frequent is AB's Amazing Ribs. AB's Amazing Ribs and Sauce, actually, is the name of the place. But they're in Dearborn Heights on Ford Road near Inkster. And the reason I go there is because the chef owner, he's a perfectionist. He will not put anything on the menu until he has cooked it, at least 6 dozen times. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He's got to get it perfect. Like I remember the first time he had me come in and taste his ribs, I thought it was the most amazing thing I ever had in my life. And he's like, yeah, it's just not right. I need to tweak it some more. Come back a week, taste it. This is amazing. I don't remember if it was as good last week or if it's better now. He's like, no, it's definitely better. I'm like, whatever it is, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I loved it before. I love it now, you know? And come back a week later. He's like, yeah, I tweaked it some more. I'm like, dude, it was perfect to begin with, you know? And he's like, he's always tweaking until it's perfect. And once it's perfect, he releases it. So, I mean, every once in a while we get a craving for fish and chips. I'm going there for it.
Okay.
It's a barbecue joint.
Yeah, right.
But I kind of got mad at him, you know, in the beginning. I'm like, why the hell do you have fish and chips at a barbecue joint? He goes, because it's the best.
Yeah.
That's why.
That's good to know.
And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, it's the best. Try it. I'm like, how do I walk into a barbecue place and order fish and chips? I can't do it. I did it once and I do it all the time now. I do it all the time.
Do you have a lot of people who are making food want you to taste it before they share it with everyone
that happens
else?
a lot, more so than anything else, actually. I don't necessarily think. Then again, who knows if you have a good palate? You know, I mean, how do you know if you have a good palate? I don't know.
You think you do, but
You think you do, but I really don't think of myself that way, but others do. And to me, it's kind of weird, like, because I don't think of myself that way. I really don't. I just know what I like and I know what I don't like. And going back to, you know, reverse engineering things and how I can either make them better or, you know, figure out how, when I taste something that's good, figure out how it was made. I think because of that, it makes me a better taster. You know what I mean? So I from that point of view, it sits right with me. But for someone to say, oh no, you have a great palate, that doesn't really sit right with me. You know what I mean? So yes, to answer your question, I get that a lot. You know, we just want your opinion. What do you think? And in many cases, I'll be like, are you sure?
It's terrible.
Sure
Now they don't want to, then you're hurting feelings.
No, I want the truth. I want the truth. I'm like, are you sure you want the truth?
So you
Can
go,
have
so someone will invite you, give you food, probably for free, and say, what do you think? And they want you, and you're like, I don't like it.
Yeah. But, well, I don't just say I don't like it.
Of course, you break it down for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's gotta hurt, it's gotta sting a little bit for you and for them, right?
Yeah. Especially for me, because I feel bad because I know what it's like to cook something for someone and have them taste it and go, you know, like that wasn't.
See, I feel, you know, to me, if it's a close friend, we can talk and you know, and have a debate or, you know, break things down. But when I go to a restaurant, I mean, even if I don't enjoy it at all, I'm like, thank you, full price, big tip, wave goodbye. I love everything. You know, like I always kill them with kindness.
And that's usually me, but every once in a
they
while,
want to know the truth. Yeah, they're asking you.
Hey, I really want to know.
Yeah.
All right, this is what I think.
No, that's tough. That's not an easy test.
This is what I think. You know, I'm sorry I didn't tell you this before. I was just being nice. I wasn't lying to you, you know. But these are the components, and I think this could be done a little bit better. Maybe you cooked this a little bit too long. Maybe this needed to be cooked a little bit longer. Maybe add a little bit of salt here, you know. Usually they're pretty close. They just miss the mark just by, you know, just a little bit.
We'll be right back right after this.
Black perspectives haven't always been centered in the telling of America's story. Now, we're taking center stage. Introducing NPR's Black Stories, Black Truths, a collection of Black-led stories from NPR's podcasts. Search NPR Black Stories, Black Truths wherever you get your podcasts.
The coffee culture, I feel like, in Dearborn has been upgrading as of late.
Yeah.
And I've been to a couple of coffee shops, and I'm loving them.
Yep.
What, like, break that down for me a little bit. Is it? Am I becoming more aware, or is the coffee scene evolving in Dearborn?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Because the whole world has always known that coffee originated in Yemen. I mean, it's been a fact. But for some reason, European coffee or French roast, you know, I don't know when the French became the leaders in cuisine. I don't know when that happened.
Yeah.
But
Probably kings and colonizing.
yeah, yeah,
It probably goes back somewhere around there.
Yeah, but the rest of the world is over there eating really, really good food
the whole time.
and drinking really, really good drinks and really, really good coffee the whole time. And they're like, yeah, we don't get it. We don't get this whole French thing. There are good things from both sides.
Of course.
The French have their thing, and I get it. When I cook, I do a mise en place too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are some things that they have attributed that are fantastic, obviously, especially when it comes to sauces. But there's a lot that I think the whole world is missing that's coming from, the Middle East, for example.
And so Yemen coffee culture. I mean, so is a Yemenese coffee shop the superior coffee shop to seek out?
It depends on who you ask. Personally, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'll tell you what, you go to Kahwa House and you have just a plain latte.
That's so good.
Just a plain
I've been
latte.
there. I love that place.
Forget having the Yemeni latte, which has the cardamom in it. And forget that. Just have a regular latte. And I'm telling you right now, the balance between milk and coffee is perfection. It's perfection. And the reason it is because Ibrahim, the owner, he comes from a family in Yemen that actually owns and runs a coffee farm, Wow. So he's grown up on that farm. He knows how to pick the berries, when to pick the berries. He knows how to roast them. He knows the different types of roast. He knows the different types of grinds. I mean, this guy knows the ins and outs of coffee.
He's an expert. I mean,
exactly. So when he's making coffee, to him, it's like breathing.
Right.
But to anybody else, it's like, well, I need to go become a barista. I need to go learn about this. For him, it's second nature. It's just back of his hand. Something he's always been around.
I love that coffee shop, and that's no surprise. I mean, I loved it just because it tasted so good, but to know that connection, and that is what honestly is keeping me up at night. Is there's probably a million stories like that in Dearborn, and it's like I don't know how to find them.
Yeah.
I don't know how to find the stories. So I mean, I follow you, and I love the content you put out because I'm constantly learning about a city that's 20 minutes from my house. Like this is something we're so lucky to have Dearborn in Michigan.
That was something like when I would post something, it wasn't just about the picture. It was about teaching people.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And like one of the things that fascinate me is the origins of food,
Right.
I'm just fascinated with it. I don't know why. It's like Indiana Jones, but in the food world.
No,
kind of thing.
absolutely. It's history. It's archaeology.
It is.
And
when the first thing I remember, the first thing I learned about, and this was like years ago, must have been right out of high school. I learned that tomatoes came from South America, and I'm like, do the Italians know that? Did anybody tell them that? Did they know? And it's weird. Like even like noodles, that started in China.
Yeah, I mean,
but pasta's
Silk Road.
known in Italy. It's like synonymous with Italy, but it started in China.
Yeah, I mean, things like that. I agree. I deep dive in that direction, and it's basically agriculture and milling of wheat, and then it's basically porridge becomes a noodle or a dumpling. I mean, and it's even it does definitely comes from the Silk Road, and even that's like debatable of like where is it? Mongolia? Is it China? Is like what? Because like the way you move for the harvest and the weather, and how would you even know if a tribe was doing it earlier and then there's no evidence of it? But I mean, pasta I think is like Japan perfects a lot of things, right? Like ramen's from China. Old, kind of ancient sushis from Korea, like, Japan just makes they kind of perfect a lot of things. Kind of like what they did with engineering and automobiles as well. I mean, although Ford's the best, but they basically are great at engineering things, that kind of already exist and making them even better. I mean, ramen to me is one of the highest art forms of any cuisine.
Yeah.
And I think that, Italy kind of did that with pasta. Italy kind of grabbed onto pasta. And I think that Italy knows. I mean, Italy is also a 20 different countries mashed into one. It's like a very ancient civilization, and every city's got their own story. But I think, and I always kind of consider Italy, like, I mean, Mediterranean, it's like, it's so similar. Like, again, my business partner is Chaldean. I mean, Chaldean culture and Italian culture it feels so similar, especially with how Roman Catholic everything is. But so, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I love deep diving into the history of food. And I think that, I mean, Dearborn, I just feel like if you live in Dearborn, if you're of Arabic descent, I feel like it seems like you mentioned, like, with like some things feel old because it's been around so long.
Yeah.
But they're so thrilling.
But for me, it's exciting to like take someone like you,
right,
to eat something that I've been eating since I was a child.
Because you watched me do it for the first time,
exactly,
and then you're living that again.
Yeah,
but I think for one, everyone should be following you on Instagram to learn more. But I definitely, selfishly, we will do something in a food tour in Dearborn. But I mean, I encourage you, if you have an inkling to do it, I think it's a great idea. And I know that so many of my customers would love to know more. I would love to know more. And there's nothing better than education through eating.
There is one thing about, I'm going to shy away from saying Middle Eastern. I'm going to refer to it as Lebanese because that's my wheelhouse. Okay. So I feel like Lebanese cuisine has been from the beginning, it has unwavered. It hasn't been watered down to the American palate, if you will. Kind of how Chinese food was watered down and it became American Chinese.
Yeah, there's not
and now
Lebanese
you're seeing,
American so much. Yeah.
Now you're seeing like Chinese cuisine coming back to, you're getting real Szechuan peppers put into dishes, and they're using the ingredients that they use at home.
There's more regional representation of Chinese cuisine.
And Lebanese food has always been that way from the get. It's always been that way and didn't need to be watered down,
But I think, I mean, in Dearborn specifically, we have enough population of Lebanese, of Middle Eastern, community to support restaurants, right? I mean, if you think about like why a Chinese American restaurant became what it was, usually it's in an area that doesn't involve a lot of Chinese communities.
Yes.
So if you go to Chinatown in New York, you're getting a way different experience than going to a Chinese restaurant in like, Duluth.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes Dearborn so special. Is like there's not. I mean, I think it's. I'm correct in saying it's the largest population of Middle Eastern descent in America for any one city.
Yeah.
So I mean, that to me. I mean, I hear just saying those words just like sounds like so much culinary opportunity to go and experience foods that you can't get.
Yeah, that's
in
the
America.
thing. If you're cooking the food that everyone eats daily, you better do a damn good job.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like you
There's
can't
no
just
room
go
for error.
It's such a special city for America. Like we don't have a lot of Dearborns in America where you can just walk in and have this kind of dynamic experience of this cuisine.
Because I've been with my mom at an Arabic restaurant and she tastes the hummus. She goes, "What the hell is this? This is hummus?"
Yeah, that's a good question. So,
you know what I mean?
What is your mom like? What is like? Would you consider like somebody like of like significant stature in your life, or like who's like an alpha and like that like what is the alpha food item that is like benchmark? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it hummus?
No.
What
Kibbe.
Kibbe? Okay, that's like
if
your kibbe's no good, then you're cast away.
That's right. and people like moms in my family and my friends' families, moms are known for their kibbe.
Okay.
And everyone thinks their mom's kibbe is the best.
It's the best, yeah.
Of
course.
Obviously, right?
Now, what are crucial kibbe ingredients for people listening?
So kibbe itself is like, there's a big disconnect, I think, for what people know kibbe to be. So typically when you say kibbe around people who don't really know what it is, they automatically think raw meat.
Right, like the Middle Eastern steak tartare.
Yeah, or even like a pate, raw pate, meat. That's not what kibbe is. Kibbe is actually a mixture of spices. And it has, there's so many different spices. There's allspice, there's clove, there's, basil, dried flowers, dried roses, actually, rose petals.
Wow.
There's so many, lots of cumin, lots and lots of cumin. There's raw onion mixed into it. There's lots of paprika in it too. And these spices are all mixed up, and then they add burgle, which is cracked wheat, to it. And that in itself is actually kibbe. Now, what you add to it makes it either a raw beef kibbe, makes it a potato kibbe, I've even had pumpkin kibbe.
So basically, like kind of like what curry, right? It's basically
Exactly.
it's the same idea
Yep.
of like you make a paste and then you add it to mole.
Yeah,
like it's
kind
like,
of
got
the
it.
same thing. So, and the mix is really what they wear as a badge of honor.
So what is the
my mix is better than yours.
So what is the kibbe? Like, is it raw beef kibbe? Is that you typically what do you think? What kind of kibbe are moms, or is it just the spice blend?
For me, my mom makes a beef raw kibbe that is just
So that's like
that's the one thing. Like if my mom says I'm making kibbe, I drop everything. I go at it.
Okay, got it.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Like my wife. My wife's actually Irish. And she's kind of like, I think this year was the first time where I saw her go for a second helping, like a second morsel, if you will, of raw kibbe. But typically she's like, no, raw meat. I can't get past it. Can't get past it. It's raw meat.
Is she pickier on other things too?
Just the raw meat. Just the raw. Yeah. And I don't blame her. It's a tough thing to get someone to do if they haven't.
They're not comfortable with it.
It's funny. I had a coworker that, we were talking about halal once, and he told me, so basically you were brainwashed. I'm like,
okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I was brainwashed when I was a kid. They fed me raw meat. I loved it, and I still love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you want to call that brainwashing, sure, I'll accept that.
We're all brainwashed in some capacity.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and it's kind of the same way of thinking for her. She grew up thinking
it's dangerous.
raw meat is dangerous. It's no good. You stay away from it. So for that taboo, I think affects your palate.
Oh, definitely. The psychology of eating is inarguable.
Yeah. I mean, there are people out there that, they eat these ants that taste like lemon, and they use them seasoning, like to add citrus to a dish.
Honestly, like
I can't do it.
I like bugs. I've been like in Mexico. There's a lot of crickets, grasshoppers, ants. I mean, grubs. Like
Junior has served me.
I've eaten a lot of bugs.
Yeah,
and they're not.
It was good, but I don't want to say that it was good because it creeped me out.
Honestly, I think I was slow. I was a little slow to arrive to eating bugs, and like I'm totally here for it. I think bugs are delicious, especially at least the Mexican preparations that I've had, like in Mexico City and Oaxaca. They're incredible.
See, a lot of people don't know, but in Saudi Arabia, they're big too.
Oh, really?
Bugs. Yeah.
What kind of bugs?
And the reason being is because locusts. And one of the way to fight locusts was to eat it.
So they eat locusts? I didn't know you could. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but wow. So you can go and have a locust in a restaurant in Saudi Arabia.
I don't know if it's so much in a restaurant, but definitely street food.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Good to know.
Yeah.
So obviously we could talk for hours.
Yeah.
You and I are due for a walking tour or driving
anytime
in Dearborn ASAP. Where can people follow you on Instagram? Tell them your handle.
F Sareini at Instagram. Sareini. That should pop up.
So check out Fred. Follow him. Take all of his tips. He knows what he's talking about.
I also have a blog, fsareini.com, and I have a YouTube channel. It's also F Sareini, where I do some recipes. I have I've been trying lately because I'm trying not to think as an Arab, Lebanese, Muslim. I'm trying to think as someone like you that, goes to a Lebanese restaurant and falls in love with fattoush and thinks, man, I want to make it, So I'm like, okay, what are the most popular things that people outside of my culture want to eat when they go to a Lebanese restaurant? They obviously want hummus. Yeah. They want fattoush. They want tabbouleh. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to put those recipes up for people to try at home.
Nice.
So that if they're afraid to order it when they're at a restaurant, they can make it at home. And if they like it, they won't be so afraid later.
So F Sareini, YouTube, blog page, and Instagram.
Yep.
Follow Fred. We're going to have you back. We should have you back for a recap of our tour of Dearborn.
I can also come back during Ramadan. We can discuss that. We could discuss halal too, because halal is a big subject to
absolutely
to tackle.
Well, thank you for at least scratching the surface today, and I look forward to deep diving with you in Dearborn soon.
Anytime. Thank you.
We would like to thank you for listening. Essential Cooking is produced by me, Ann DeLisi, along with my co-host, Chef James Regato. This episode was also produced, engineered, edited, and mastered by Connor Anderson, with production support from David Lyons. Original music by the Mallet Brothers. Essential Cooking is a production of WDET's public radio station.